Be yourself sounds like the safest advice in the world, doesn't it? But what if it's the very thing that is keeping you stuck? Because most leaders aren't struggling with being fake, they're struggling with being misaligned. And the cost of getting that wrong quietly builds over time. Welcome to The Second Voice, where we uncover the conversations that leaders don't have out loud. I'm your host, Louisa Hogan, and today I am exploring the challenge that most leaders have around authenticity and asking whether we've misunderstood authenticity entirely. And I'm very excited to have a wonderful guest with me today. His name is Kurt Busch, and he is a certified internal family systems practitioner, a trauma-informed coach, and co-founder of Brimstone Coaching Group. He has a background spanning corporate leadership, pastoral ministry, and coaching, and he helps leaders break free from self-doubt, embrace authenticity, and lead with confidence. He has overcome his own struggles with imposter syndrome, and Kurt is very passionate about guiding others through transformational growth into authentic leadership. Kurt, I'm so pleased to have you here with me today because I've been looking forward to this since we've scheduled our time together, because I'm so intrigued by this idea that you brought to me around authenticity, and it's not what we think it is. So I'm very excited to explore that with you today. But before we even get into it, tell us a little bit about you and your background. I've given a brief bio, but I'm interested to know more. What was that journey?
Yeah, Louisa, thanks for having me, and thanks for asking the question. I'm going to need like 3 hours for that journey.
Oh gosh, I wish we had 3 hours. I actually always say that in these episodes, like we need 3 hours. Or I say, you're going to have to come back. We'll do more.
Yep. Yeah, so I started my career in the manufacturing world. I did some production supervision. I had the privilege to oversee a process that was done by about 12 employees. Then I worked in HR in that same manufacturing plant for a number of years. I did all the labor recruiting, which was a wild thing to learn kind of on the fly, but I loved it. I loved my time there. Great learning experience, both leading and recruiting. I went to seminary late in life. That was something that was kind of unplanned. It kind of fell into my lap. And then I pastored a couple local churches for nearly a decade. And I don't know if you remember 2020, Louisa, but it was wild.
It was
wild. Just wild. So it was kind of in the process of leading a local church and leading some volunteer leaders through COVID, through all of the other sort of cultural things going on here in our country. At the same time, I was leading them through their own kind of navigation of their own anxiety. I learned in that moment that that's really what I love doing. I love helping those volunteer leaders who have never been in a situation like that. None of us had. I really loved helping them learn how to navigate for themselves. And over time, what happened is those leaders that I was coaching, that organization that I was coaching, the culture we were building, it took hold. I was doing less coaching. I was having to do more organizational leading, which, if I'm honest with you, Louisa, because it's just us here, right? I did not like that form of leadership. I'm not an organizational leader. It was draining. So then in 2024, I decided to kind of step into some more like actual formal coaching and launched the Brimstone Coaching Group with a really good friend of mine.
Awesome. What a journey, and what a self-discovery too. What I find wild about that, and it's a lot like my journey, is it's surprising how things emerge, and you never imagine where you'll end up, and then you find yourself in this place where you're extremely passionate and you're doing something that you absolutely love. And I love that for you, that you found that. So that's incredible. Now, I know that part of your coaching work, you've in the information that I've read about you and that you've sent to me, you come across this concept of authenticity with the leaders that you work with.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, like specifically the work that you do in that authenticity space and that self-doubt space. And tell me, where does authenticity start to break down for leaders?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the work that my partner and I have done over the last decade, we like to say we coached together but separately for about a decade before we launched our practice together. And what we started to see was that the way people were leading and the way people were thinking about leadership in our neck of the woods was unsustainable. And that when leaders would show up with this sort of mental model of authenticity that said, yeah, I might lose my temper in a meeting sometime, or I might lash out at you sometimes. That's just me. That's who I am. What we found is that was neither getting the results they wanted, nor was it leading to a leadership that was whole and thriving and sustainable in the long term. What we found was it led to a lot of burnout. It led to a lot of fighting. It led to a lot of tension between the leader and the people they were trying to lead, because it always that sort of authenticity always leads to conflict. It always leads to, well, if you're not following me, then there's either something wrong with me or something wrong with you. And that's not a great place from which to lead an organization or lead a group of volunteers. So we just found like there had to be something else. There had to be a different way to think about this. And what we really uncovered was people don't know who they are. We didn't know who we really are. We didn't know how we wanted to lead. What we uncovered was we are leading with mental models that leaders do X, Y, Z. Leaders have control and power and authority. Leaders have all the answers. Leaders are tough, right?
Yeah.
And what we found is that's just not the recipe for thriving. So we really set out to find a different way to think about leadership.
Yeah. You're speaking my language, because that's the work that I do, changing
Yeah.
that voice of, I'm resilient, I'm tough, and that's what leadership is. And,
Yeah.
the work that I do is all around strength is not where it's at. It's,
Yeah.
steadiness lasts, strength burns out. So I love that you're doing that work. And it
Yeah.
reminds me so much, early on in my career, when I was in I got leadership roles quite early in my career, but I remember it was my first C-suite role. I was a chief development officer for a business, and I remember at the time I used to be the kind of like I would come in and I would be grumpy and I would allow it to show on my face, and I wasn't ever
Yeah.
mean to anyone, but I'd be grumpy. And my CEO at the time told me, "Look, everyone can see that you're grumpy. You got to stop doing that." I'm like, "But don't you want me to be an authentic leader?" Right? And I remember
Yeah.
having that same discussion, like, "You want me to be an authentic leader?" And at the time I didn't quite understand what she wanted from me, because I'm like,
Yeah.
"You want me to be authentic, but you want me to hide my grumpy face." And then I realized actually it was an internal shift, right? It's an
Yeah.
internal shift. It's not pretending to be something else, right? You be
Yes.
authentic, but you got to change how you see yourself, right?
Yes.
So is that the kind of work that you do with people?
It is.
Yeah.
I think that that's so ingrained in people, this sort of mental model of authenticity. It means no filter, take me as I am, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think what you just described, Louisa, is what a lot of people feel of like, if I'm going to be authentic, I have to be on display all the time.
Yeah.
And sure, that is probably some form of authenticity. I would probably say that's just some form of being unfiltered.
Yeah.
I actually think we can to your example, hide that sort of grumpy posture and still be authentic, because giving the world all of us all the time doesn't always equate to authenticity.
Yeah.
We help leaders think about authenticity like this. Who and how do you want to be? There's a lot of, like I say that flippantly, there's a lot of work that goes into that. But that work of deciding really, really clearly, here's who I want to be, here's how I want to be, and then taking steps to make that happen, we would say that's truly authenticity.
Mm.
And maybe, I think even that sort of, to go back to your example, maybe showing up, on a Monday or a Tuesday with sort of a vulnerable posture of the emotion that I'm feeling, that certainly can be a part of the who and how I want to be.
Yeah.
But we would say that if that decision's being made without sort of a guiding principled decision to say, here's who I want to be, that it's probably not authenticity. It's probably something else.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. And, I think what I love about that is that people don't often know what their internal guiding system is, or their values, or the
Yeah.
values they want to bring into leadership. And they
Yeah.
hear the word leader and they think power, they think,
Yeah.
control, they think all sorts of things. But actually, leadership is all about service.
Yeah.
and you have to align your values with that idea of being in service to the people that you're leading, because there's a
Yeah.
lot of sacrifice when
Yeah.
it's to leadership. There's so much sacrifice to leadership. So unless you feel aligned with that, unless you know what that exactly looks like for you and how
Yeah.
you can bring yourself as leader, it's going to be really difficult to get people to follow you, and also b to feel like you're enjoying the leadership role, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting. I mean, Louisa, I think we're like saying so much of the same thing. I'm getting so excited having this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
Years ago, we found some research from the Harvard Business Journal that said like 15% of adults consider themselves self-aware, which
Hmm.
is shockingly low, right?
Yeah.
It's just shockingly low. And I think what we realize in our work is that even if people don't know that they're doing certain things or have certain default behaviors, every one of us does, right? Every one of us has a default pattern of behaviors that we use when we get into leadership. Every one of us has a mental model of how we think about this. The question is, are those serving us?
Hmm.
Are those getting the results we want? And I think that's that self-awareness piece that frankly we get to choose to do the work to understand. But I think that's what separates really good leaders, especially leaders who think about service. Like you said, I mean, that's for me the bar of like what makes a good leader. It's a sort of service mixed with self-awareness. Like that's what separates a good leader from an extraordinary leader.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is a podcast about self-talk, right? So like what kind of self-talk do your clients or the people you work with have when it comes to this authenticity and, faking it? Is I mean, I imagine there's doubt in there, or is, what do
Yeah.
you come across with that?
Yeah, just the other day, Louisa, I had a client who is like a department manager at a manufacturing plant, and he was just feeling drained. And he like leaned into the Zoom camera and he said, "Am I the only one that feels like I don't belong, or am I the only one that feels like I like don't deserve my role?" And I, like internally, I'm like celebrating that he's realizing what he's feeling, but externally, I'm not celebrating. Uh,
Yeah.
so I looked at him. I said, I think everyone feels this, right? I think every leader carries some level of doubt or inner critic or imposter syndrome. Um, and I think that is such a common human experience. I think you said it right away. Like often we don't talk about it. Often we don't let it kind of out into the light. I think the light is, if I can use the light dark metaphor, light is
Mhm.
where those things die, right? Light is where those things lose power.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think that sort of I'm going to be found out. That
Mhm.
sort of posture is pretty scary for some of our clients. That's something we
Mhm.
see on a regular basis. We do a lot of work with nonprofit leaders. We probably do more work with nonprofit leaders than we do with corporate leaders,
Mhm.
and that nonprofit work can be really scary. There's
Yeah.
usually a board involved. There's usually other anxious people involved, and it's usually a fear of like, what if I'm found out that I'm not the leader people think I am?
Yeah. 100%. I work in that not-for-profit space too. I work corporate, not-for-profit. I work with both, and it's a whole different ball game in the
Yeah,
in the not-for-profit world, because they're also people full of heart and passion, and they're doing the
yeah,
work because they love the work and
yeah,
they want to
yeah,
do a good job. And sometimes the wrong people get promoted into leadership roles because they've been there a
yeah,
long time and they really love the work. And um, it's fascinating, and I just love this concept of authenticity in that, because they might step into that role and they want to be authentic and show themselves as these passionate people, but then that also might backfire because they're not maybe able to step up enough that people feel inspired to follow them, because
yeah,
they're just they're passionate at, and they're knowledgeable at doing the frontline stuff, but maybe not so much the leading or strategic
yeah,
stuff. It's an
yeah.
interesting world, right?
It is. And I mean, I think, man, Louise, I want to go a lot of different ways. Here's what I wonder
Yeah.
about sometimes. I mean, we'll sometimes talk about alignment is more important than like even a continued role. I mean, I think you were even kind of getting at like, what if a leader's authentic alignment isn't what a board wants? Or one of the things that we've run into before is that sometimes good leadership looks slow, or sometimes good leadership looks weak. And then there's this question of, am I going to align myself with who and how I want to be, even if that means the board is going to see me as weak or
Mm.
slow, like, or am I gonna change who and how I want to be so that I can sort of get through the discomfort of the boards looking at me. I mean, it's such a complex conversation,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of nuance in between. It's certainly
For
not an
sure.
either or, but
Yeah.
yeah, that question of alignment,
What
alignment
does it
when
look like? What does aligned leadership actually look like?
yeah, great question. I think you should have to answer that. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I
Asking
mean,
the tough questions here on the
I
second
love it.
voice.
Hard hitting, hard hitting. Yeah, I mean, so I have a client, a nonprofit leader client who doesn't often fit the mold of the leaders, the volunteer leaders on the board that he serves, and like he has to ask himself every day if he wants to hold the alignment to say, he would say, I am capable of bringing the change to the system that we all want to see. I'm capable of impacting this system, uh, but it's slow, right? It's
Mm.
very slow. And it's pretty regular that this client faces some sort of critique around the slowness, uh, because there's no shortage of leaders on the internet who can say, hey, we're going to do this fast, and here's what
Mhm.
it looks like. Follow these
Mhm.
3 steps for transformation and growth.
Mhm.
So I think the work that we do with him, and I think that he's doing on his own, doesn't he's doing the work. I'm just helping. Uh, the work he's doing is asking, like, what is the cost of misalignment, right? There is certainly a cost of alignment, to who and how we want to be, to let the work be slow and meaningful, and let good process be good process. But what's the cost of misalignment?
Mm.
That's often a question we ask to kind of help clients like understand that nuance, and sometimes we can bear the cost of misalignment, and sometimes we can't.
Yeah, for sure. And misalignment will, causes all sorts of problems. Like you say, there's a cost to it. And,
Yeah,
there's a cost to turnover of the people working with you. There's, because people will join your organization because they believe in the work that you're doing. And then if there's
yeah,
misalignment with the leader or the CEO or the general manager or whoever it is, leading that and it doesn't fit,
yeah,
creates culture problems, doesn't it? There's
yeah.
all those other costs that come with it.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Was there, you know, was there a moment in your own leadership that you felt like you being yourself wasn't enough or that you weren't being yourself? And I know you said earlier that you did not like, the leadership um, in a different space to what you ended up in. So tell me about your self-talk in that. Like, how did you align yourself, and were there doubts with that shift and that change in your journey?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think what I believe about our paths and our journey is that every day there's a potential for these voices to show up in new ways, right? Like I can get on top of my inner critic or my negative self talk, but tomorrow life is all different and it might show up in a different way. So I need to be ready to attack those things again. Yeah, I mean, I think what was true for me early in my career, imposter syndrome was really, really, really heavy. Uh, so much so that I would like leave meetings and feel regret and remorse and say, why didn't I say that, or why did I say that? Um, yeah, I had a couple good coaches years ago help me work through some of that, but I think that that transition from like, here's the sort of leadership that I really love, and I can see coming that is getting less and less in a current actual vocational role. Yeah, it unearthed that imposter syndrome in a whole new way. I think the voice, the loud voice, was, hey, a good pastor could make this shift. A good pastor would make this shift, instead of saying, hey, I think I think I'm going to take an off ramp here and find more of the work that I love. It was with the help of a good coach that sort of helped me realize that I do have the agency to make those shifts and to do those transitions that give life,
Hmm.
and that ratio of like the things you do that give you life and the things you do that drain you. I have agency in that ratio, and that was completely new to me. As silly as that sounds, Louisa,
It's not
in
silly.
my 40s, I had no idea that I got to make that decision.
Yeah,
So again, that work with a good coach to say, making that decision doesn't make you a bad anything. It makes you a human that has agency. Was hugely important for me.
for sure. Look, it's not silly, and some people go their entire lives without realizing that.
Yeah,
And how fortunate and how wonderful that you realized that in your lifetime.
yeah,
My big realization in my 40s was that every single emotion that I have, self doubt, everything, all comes down to fear. Every single thing. Guilt,
mm,
feel guilty. If you really dig down into that, you feel fear. And self doubt is fear. Everything just boils down to fear.
yeah,
And then when you really look at it, what do I have to fear? And
yeah,
there's actually not an awful lot we have to fear. Like, if
yeah,
you're fearing people judging you, that's on them, not on
yeah,
you, right? And
yeah,
it took me an awful long time to realize that. And it doesn't mean that I get it right all the time. Just as you said, like, there's still there
yeah,
days where we'll have that voice. But I think you
yeah,
get to a point where you can be more forgiving of yourself and go, oh, yep, this is just a reminder that I need to
yeah,
get back to thinking, you know, out of that space, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
I love that. I mean, I think we would say the same thing, that if you
mhm,
boil everything down far enough, fear is present.
yeah,
And it's such a motivator, right? It's such a
yeah,
driver. Yeah.
yeah. But it doesn't always drive us in the right direction.
That's so true. That's so true. 100%.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love your story and I love where you are now. So now you're coaching, you set that up with your, how long have you been doing your coaching for now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like, formally, officially, we launched it in fall of 24.
Okay.
But again, we like to say we were coaching separately but together for 4 or 5 years before that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we probably would say we've been coaching together for like nearly a decade, but
Amazing.
formally just in 2024.
Oh, well, that's still quite a while ago. I mean, it's a couple of years now. In that work, what are I mean, you've sort of touched on it, but do you have like a formal methodology that you use when working with your clients? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
So, two things. First, we are both trauma informed coaches. So, much of our work is based on this idea that all of us have little t traumas in our past that shape how we show up today. So, we think about this in what we call protective promises. That in our first formation, all of us make what we call protective promises to ourselves to keep ourselves safe. And certainly younger versions of us needed that protection in that way. And it was good and it was right. But as we get into adulthood and we lead, those protective promises aren't serving us in a way that's fruitful or productive. So then we help people identify those protective promises, identify the patterns of behavior that they trigger, and replace them with more purposeful and preferred promises. That's one of the journeys we help people go on. Again, uncovering what caused us to do what we do now, and then replace those with new ways and new patterns of being.
New
Uh,
pathways. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The other framework that we use is what we call our transformational equation. I hate math, Louisa, and I don't know why we
So do
settled on
I.
the word equation. Like, what,
Because
what a
it's
dumb thing.
relatable.
Yeah, I guess
It's
that's
good.
true.
I think it's a good word.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So we think about it like this. We think about this equation. It's E encounter plus R reflection equals transformation equals T transformation.
Yeah.
We think we have encounters every single day, dozens of them, that shock us or surprise us and cause us to react in ways that we wouldn't normally choose.
Hmm.
Maybe somebody cuts us off in traffic. Maybe somebody puts their grocery cart in line before us and we react, or we have this intense response that we're not sure why it happens. we think the practice of reflecting on those things and understanding, what happened, why did we do this, what did we feel, and what would we rather do next time. We think once we see those things, once we can answer those questions honestly, now as adults we get to do something about them. Once we see it, now we have a choice.
Yeah.
And we think that leads to transformation. So it's really those two frameworks that we think about employing together to help people move from this place of being unaware of why they do what they do into a place of being aware and now getting to do the work to say, what am I going to do next time?
Yeah, I love it. Because, I draw on a lot of like neuroscience in the work that I do in
Yeah.
building steadiness into leadership. And I love, our brains are predictive. We
Yeah.
predict what's going to happen based on our past experiences, which is a lot of what you're talking about. And so anytime something happens based on a past experience, we predict that this thing's going to happen, even though that thing may not happen.
Yeah.
And I love your equation, even though I hate math too. Like the equation's good because the first path is awareness, but awareness is not enough. You need to be able to then work on that to change the pathway so
Yeah.
that we predict a new outcome, which is
Love
that
that.
transformation that you're talking about. So brilliant. I think that's brilliant and easy to remember and easy to work on, right? Because I think sometimes some people just make it far too complex and people give up, right?
I think so. Yeah. If it's not attainable or achievable or like practical and I can grab it, I'm not going to use it.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we need 3 hours and we're coming to the end. Can you believe how fast it goes? Like 30 minutes goes so fast. I hate it. But if somebody's listening and they feel successful on the outside and internally they might feel a little bit off or not aligned based on that authenticity we talked about, where can they start recalibrating without blowing everything up or blowing everything out of the water so that they suddenly look like a completely different person and people are like, what? Like, who is this person? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I love the way you frame that question. So one of our clients said once that this sort of self-work, and probably the work you do too, feels like one of those old toys where you take the lid off a jar and these like spring snakes fly out.
Yeah.
Once you start doing this work, like, holy cow, this could like change you. Yeah. And anyway, here's a tip that we give often. We think about the words regret and remorse. One of the first things we ask our clients to do is to notice throughout their days, when do they feel regret or remorse about how they showed up? Whether that's, man, I lashed out more than I wanted to, or I didn't speak up when I wanted to, or, whatever it is, something didn't go the way I wanted it to. Notice those and literally take a pen and paper and answer some simple questions. What happened? Who was there? What did I feel? What did I do? Those are really simple steps to start to see what's going on and how we're showing up in ways that I think are manageable. Maybe not. Maybe they are going to be jarring for some people, but I think that initial, like, just noticing where I'm not showing up the way I want to, just beginning to notice that in small ways, I think is a great first step.
Love it. That's amazing advice. I love it so much. So where can people get hold of you? If you're listening and you want to get hold of Kurt, you're whereabouts in the US are you based?
I'm in Iowa in the U.S., but most of our clients are digital, virtual.
Awesome. So even if you're in Australia, can work with you, where can they get hold of you, Kurt? Like if they want to work with you?
Yep. We have a website, brimstonecoachinggroup.com. We have all the information people need to know there. We have a podcast too. We have a book out. I mean, I'm not a huge plugger, Louisa, but any of the ways.
You should be.
I know. I'm a 9 Enneagram. I'm a people pleaser, if you know what that means. There's multiple ways on that website to connect with us and kind of see who we are and why we do what we do.
Excellent. I'll put your website in our show notes for everybody listening if you want to click on that and listen to Kurt, talk to Kurt. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kurt. I've really appreciated the discussion and I wish you all the best with your business. A couple of years old, but seems to be going great guns. So good luck to you with all of that and thanks for joining me today. To everyone listening, I think the biggest takeaway that I've taken out of today is that holding on to who you've been as a leader is not always the way to go. And sometimes about having the courage to reflect and look at who you are and see if you're aligned to your values or the person you want to be, and to choose. It's about choosing. You can choose the kind of leader you are. You don't have to be what everyone else thinks you need to be. You can choose and make sure that it's in service to what you're planning to do within the work that you do, whether that's volunteering or in an organization, a not-for-profit or corporate. Doesn't matter where you are. You can choose the kind of leader that you want to be. Thanks again, Kurt, and to everyone listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.